Hello and welcome to Literary Candy, where we talk about sweet literature. I'm Makila Candy Harris, and today we have our guest novelist, Paula Rose Michelson, and she's going to be talking about her latest book, Commitment for Two. Paula, welcome to the
Thank you for having me, Candy. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how your writing journey started?
I didn't know I was dyslexic. My mom thought I was talented, and she wanted to encourage me to learn to punctuate and spell well. And the gentleman that was the editor for the San Diego Times wanted somebody to write a teen scene column once a week. So my mom volunteered me. And every Friday when the paper came, I said, I don't want to read that. I never thought I'd be a writer. While working for Chosen People Ministries, as a church coordinator, God called me out to write for him. And I started writing the Naomi books because Naomi, who was the least important of the three ladies I was going to write about, started telling me her story. And so Naomi and I penned these books together. And there are 6 of them. The 4th one just was published, and that's called Commitment for Two, the Naomi Chronicles, Book 4.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's a great start for a journey in writing to start as a teenager. That's awesome. So tell us about the book, Commitment for Two.
Commitment for Two is probably the most romantic book I've ever written.
Really?
Well, my mom and aunt used to read books that she would give me starting about age 11. And I'd read them and we'd talk about them. And so I wanted always to write books that moms and daughters could read together.
Oh,
and that was my goal. And so my husband, who's a pastor and a missionary, would read them the very first draft to make sure that it was wholesome and clean. And so writing a romance into the 21st century that's wholesome and clean was a challenge and a joy, because I don't want anyone to give their daughter or to be reading anything that would cause them to have emotions that are not godly. I wanted them to see a good role model. And the fact that Chaz and Naomi get married in book 1 and they consummate their union finally in book 4 is a testament to how God has taught us to wait, not just because we're married, but until we're right with each other. Both of these characters marry and have a secret that they're keeping from everybody and from each other. And so they have a lot of growing. First of all, they have to come to know the Lord. And then they have to come to know each other well enough to trust each other. Because marriage is a commitment you make before God. And then you honor with your bodies when the two of you are united correctly in God.
Wow, it sounds exciting, and I am really wanting to read this book because I think it'll be great for both single and married people. Who were you intending to read this book?
Initially, when I wrote the book, it was because we were returning to congregations and churches where my husband had preached to connect the dots between the old and the new covenant, equipping them to go out and speak with their Jewish friends and neighbors and relatives through marriage. But when I went to churches to revisit, the women hadn't done anything. And I thought, well, I'm going to give them a tool that they can read and enjoy and share with their non-believing Jewish friends. But once they got posted on Amazon, I discovered there's a huge group of readers. This book came out and it hit bestseller in its categories right away. And it's been in the top 200 ever since. So the books, God gives them to me, and then I do the work, and then God does with them as he chooses. And he has been blessing the work, and I'm very grateful to him.
He has, and you mentioned a few things that people can learn from it, but for you, what's the main point that you want people to learn after having read the book?
This particular book is an interesting one in that there's a lot of joy. There's two marriages, 3 babies are born. Chaz fulfills his promise to find Naomi's family and bring her back. But in the middle of all this, there's somebody that has got it in for her. And so towards the end, she ends up on stage with a knife held at her throat while she's holding her baby and her life in jeopardy. And I think the important thing for people to realize is whether we're good, bad, in somebody else's eyes or in God's eyes, good things happen and bad things happen. It's how we weather those storms in the Lord. And if we find people that aren't out weathering those storms well, invite them to know the Lord or help them prayerfully through the situation. In this particular book, Naomi's 3-book adversary is actually taking care of her. And during that time, Naomi mentors Lola and she becomes a believer in Jesus. And so it really just shows that we can't close the door on people just because they've had a bad experience or done something bad to us. That's not what Jesus does. He's our role model. So that's not what we're to do. It's hard sometimes. Naomi did not want to trust her, but she needed to. And that was God's plan.
Okay. Well, I have found that a lot of authors put a little bit of their own personality, their own traits, their own characteristics in their stories. Which one of your characters do you identify with the most, Paula?
Well, it's true that I identify most with Naomi, but it's also true that we have good and bad in all of us. And so there are parts of Lola that I identify with. There's no one that's all good and no one that's all bad. They all have character flaws. As Naomi has grown, so have I. God has taught me things through writing this. And afterwards, like with the first book, it took me 2 years to realize that's a lot about Ron and me, but I didn't see it at the time. I think that God is so gracious unto me and unto readers too, that we read the books and we create and write the books, and we really don't see the layers there until we're ready. God's word says that he won't reveal more to us until we're ready. And so when I go back and read it, I go, wow, I remember Ron and I doing something like that, or Ron and I talking about something like that. But at the time, I didn't see it. I was just in the process of being blessed by the work that the Lord had given me to do.
Wow. So where can we find this fantastic book?
Well, all of the paperbacks are available at Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. And if you would like to get the Kindles, they're only on Amazon, and I've marked them all down to 99 cents, which is the lowest price you can pay for a Kindle, so that readers can get them. And the nice thing about Kindle is they have a lending library. So if you get a Kindle, you can share that book with some other reader for 14 days, and it doesn't cost them anything. So it's a good way for people to hopefully read books that would build up their faith and yet maybe enrich their lives in some way. The books are somewhat historic because Naomi's is a descendant of Jews that were forced into Catholicism during the Inquisition. And so her history is one that is little known. But all of us in our lives have ended up in situations where we've ended up thinking that we had to live something out that wasn't our choice. And the biggest thing I think these books show people is that through God's love, there are always choices that bless us.
Yeah. So now what's next for you, Paula?
Well, I've just released my kids' book called 8-Year-Old Gracie and the Save a Soul Prayer Team. This book is called A Father's Broken Heart. And that Kindle will release on the 24th of this month. But I'm already writing the 5th Naomi book, which is called Sorrow Season.
Wow, you took up a heavy pace.
Well, I was sick for a couple of years, so everything got backed up. So the Lord's got me moving through things quickly, and I'm grateful for that because I have readers that are eager to read the books. This children's book, though, is really precious to me. This is the first book in the 9-book series about the fruit of the Spirit. So each book is about a fruit. This first book is about God's love. So
that is something that all children need to learn at an early age. If they learn the fruit of the Spirit, they'll be able to weather any storm in their lives, and they'll be able to
absolutely.
get along with people. There's so much value in
Mm-hmm.
the fruit of the Spirit. So it sounds like something that every parent could use.
It is, and it's written for kids. In fact, we have 2 campuses, our church does, and so I'm reading a chapter in children's church each Sunday for the next 15 weeks, and I'm just delighted to do that because the kids are so wonderful. And there's a cookie contest at the back. I always encourage everyone that reads it to submit a contest because the next book has a cookie in it. If you give me a recipe that the judges, which are the community, love, your recipe and your name is going to appear in that book. So
Wow,
that's,
that sounds like a lot of fun.
it is. But getting back to the Naomi books, when I started writing these books, I really didn't realize that what God had given me was a series of books that are like Hosea and Gomer, but
Mm,
then at the end, it's Jesus fetching his bride home. And so that sums up this series in 2 biblical comments. Because when I was writing a sorrow season, my soul was crying so much. I said, okay, God, I dug in my heels and said, I'm not going to do this until you show me what the 6th book is. You know, God is really wonderful. When he
yeah.
gives you an assignment and you get to the point where you just can't go further and you ask him, he's going to show you something or tell you something that's going to bless your socks off. That's what happened to me. So
Yeah.
this book, which has been a challenge, is turning out to be my biggest joy. But I do hope that moms and daughters read Commitment for Two. It's a great book for moms to read, to share with their preteen daughters and talk about choices and waiting and the consequences of, in this book, Lola is thinking about getting an abortion and dealing with all of that. And so it's a true to life story. Um, Having worked for Pathways to Care, which is a Christian alternative to Planned Parenthood, I was really careful that I was delicate, but that I portrayed the effect of thinking about an abortion rather than uh, deciding to keep the pregnancy, to keep the child, and it's
Yeah.
a difficult thing.
Yeah, it sounds like it delves into some deep issues, and a lot of people can definitely benefit from having some other views to think about.
Right. Well, I didn't delve too deeply because, again, I wanted to keep it mother-daughter friendly. But those are the issues that we're being bombarded with in the 21st century.
Right.
And the figures show that about 89% of women that get pregnant and have an abortion will do it over and over again. That's
Mm.
my big concern, my big red flag. And that's why it's something that had to be. God knew he was going to put it there because he gave me a tender heart about that. But it
Well,
is a romance
a
in
tender
early
heart.
days.
It sounds like you have a tender heart about a lot of issues, and in particular marriage. So um, I think that your book is definitely something that married people and single people will want to read. Now, why don't you tell us how to get in contact with you? What social
Okay.
media, websites, what do you have?
I'm on Google Plus. I have a blog called writingpaularose.blogspot. And through there, I'm on Google Plus. I'm on LinkedIn, Paula Rose Michelson. I'm on Facebook, both as Paula Rose Michelson and Paula Rose. And I have 2 groups for people who are reading, whether the children's book or the Naomi books, so they can get an advanced copy to read. A lot of people love that. They like having the copy ahead of time. They like getting their review written and going and buying the 99-cent book so they can post it. And I appreciate that. Let's see what I'm on Twitter, both as Paula let's see, as Paula at Wordsmith 1 and as Paula Rose. So as author Paula Rose. So you can find me at either locations. I'm not so active on Twitter anymore because there's a lot of books that are coming out.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just working with an illustrator for the first time in my life too. So that's a real interesting experience.
Yeah, I'll bet. Why don't you tell us the names of the books that precede Commitment for Two? Because I know it's a series. So just go through the titles real quick of with the 3 books. Commitment for Two is the 4th, correct?
Is the 4th.
Okay.
The first book is No Other Choice. It is how Naomi comes into the country illegally and is trapped in a house for 5 years and ends up taking over this mission while she hides who she is. The second book, she's at the end of the first book, she's married and they've found out that she isn't who they think she is, so she runs away. The second book is called Choosing to Be. It's Chaz, her husband, and Naomi's individual stories about how they both give their life to Jesus. And then they come back together at a friend's wedding and renew their wedding vows. The third book, Beginning Anew, is exactly that. They're back in Spanish Harlem, where the majority of the community is Catholic, and they're 2 Messianic Jews. And so they have to figure out how to be who God is creating them to be and be what the community needs Naomi to be. She's considered the Tia of Las Niñas. She's the one that goes and rescues illegal immigrant girls from being deported. That's the mission she was given. And so in that book, it's determining how to be that person. Chaz is the international philanthropist, and stay in this community. Stay where God planted you. And then we get to the 4th book. And the 4th book, her adversary and one of the girls that she has known, watched growing up, are going to be handed this job, which that she's taken over, but it's going to become a mission for women who are raped and being abused. And so she has to go through a transition, and so does Chaz. So we see the characters continuing to transition, just like we transition in life. And they're easy to find. All you have to do is type in Naomi Chronicles, and the books are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. And although they are standalone, for the best read, I hope you read them in sequence.
Okay. Then we will post all of them on literarycandy.com. And thank you so much, Paula, for being with us and for sharing about your books today.
Thank you for inviting me, and God bless you.
Thank you.